Okay, hello everybody and welcome to the Energy Democracy webinar hosted by the Federation of Young European Greens, particularly the Sustainable Europe Working Group. I just want to say my name is Emily West. I'm from the Young Greens of England and Wales. We have three participants today. They are Roland Tual, Matilde Tessia, and Juan Grosad. I'm really sorry if I've got your pronunciations wrong, guys. Okay, so my first question that I'll ask today is just one to get the ball rolling, and that is, if you were a type of food, what would you be? I will put that out to Matilda first. I hope you're ready for it.
What kind of food would I be? Well, because I'm French and vegetarian, I would be ratatouille, of course.
Nice, I like it. Juan, do you know what kind of food you'd be?
What kind of food would I be? I'd probably be an ensaimada, which is a lovely Mallorcan pastry. If you've not tried it, I recommend it if you come to Mallorca.
Fabulous, thank you very much. And Roland, what food would you be?
Well, because I'm very anchored into territories, I will be a French cheese, which is a local pride for each French person, and a territory project per se, I would say.
Lovely, thank you very much. For those interested, I would probably be chocolate because I love chocolate. If we're all ready, I'll get moving on to the introduction. So, as I said, that I am speaking on behalf of the Federation of Young European Greens Sustainable Europe Working Group. And the reason that we're hosting this webinar is that we're really angry about the monopolies and oligopolies. I'm sorry if I can't do that right, but yeah, the monopolies that are taking control of the energy in our European Union. Just so we're crystal clear, the monopolies are exclusive control of a commodity or service in a particular market, or a control that makes it possible to manipulate prices. Therefore, there are a select amount of companies raising prices because they can and they want to. Therefore, what we are here to discuss is that if energy was to be controlled on a more local social basis, prices could be kept down and people couldn't really be as greedy. So I will go through our aims and objectives now. And that is, we would like to educate and to learn from this webinar because learning is important. It keeps us motivated and progressing to a greener world. Motivation leads to action. The more motivated we are, the more fired up we are, ready to make some real change. Another aim and objective we have of this webinar is to give people who are interested or curious insight into the challenges and solutions of community-based energy production, specifically in the context of the European Union. And in this context, as I said before, we're angry and we are fighting against the monopolies that are unfortunately operating for us. So, on that note, I would like to pass over to our fantastic first speaker, Roland Tual, who is from Reece, I hope I pronounced that right, in the European Federation of Renewable Energy Cooperatives. Thank you very much. 10 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much for the intro, and I'm very glad to be here, and all my colleagues are jealous. So that's a double honor. I'm from Rescope EU, and I'm just doing a bit of advertising for the project I manage. This is FlexScope. I joined the association 1 year ago to work on this, but had a good discussion with our policy officer, so the guy in charge of the EU advocacy at Rescope EU, in order to give you some insights about our vision of the few challenges that we face. I've prepared a presentation that I will share with you right now. Okay, I hope you can see my screen. Tell me if there's, okay, this should be displayed. Is it okay? I cannot hear you.
Yes, it's perfectly okay, Roland.
Okay, great. Here we go. So I will go through the three main questions that are about the opportunities for energy democracy, and Rescope in particular, the challenges we face at the EU level, and the crucial changes we'd like to see happening. But first, I will give a quick intro on what Rescope are. So basically, Rescope, and this explains also the acronym of the association, it stands for Renewable Energy Sources, quite obviously, the most common acronym for renewables when speaking English, and cooperative. So Rescopes are groups of citizens who cooperate on renewables and energy efficiency, basically the two pillars of the energy transition. So it's not so much about the what, it's about the how. It's citizens' initiative done in a cooperative manner. For this, we don't use the legal entity, the legal status of cooperative, because it could be too restrictive and it doesn't have the same acceptance depending on countries. But we use the ICA, the International Cooperative Alliance principles and definition. I've listed them here. It's mostly about applying the principle of democracy in the to the enterprise, or to the to the energy sector. So we belong to the cooperative alliance. There's the European branch, and we're representing energy for the European branch. So it's not about the what, but still, I will give you a few explanation about the what. When it comes to energy cooperatives, we see cooperatives all across the value chain, or the technical chain, like from the production to the supply, going through the distribution, and including also services. So the vast majority of our members, they are producing energy, which means that basically we're talking about co-owned turbines, or co-owned solar panels on retail shops, for example. So citizens can buy shares of a solar farm on a I'm looking for example, but I've missed the for example, an ERCOP in France has Biocop as a member. For our French audience, this will talk to them. These solar farms are co-owned by a bunch of participants who each have a share. This is production. Well, we also have many and growing supply cooperatives. I've listed some of them here. The biggest we have is in Great Britain, and it's 400,000 consumers involved and supplied by a cooperative, cooperative energy. That's their name. There are also two big ones in Germany. That's Greenpeace Energy, which is a spin-off from the association, and EWS, Schönau, that you see also as a distributor there. And we have others that are beyond, three others that are beyond the 50,000 clients and members. So just to tell you that it's not only very anecdotal citizen initiative, but these cooperatives are also true through companies and entities. And there are emerging sectors which I've listed there. It's not limited to the classical production and supply, but also services, smart services like energy ID, electrical vehicle sharing. There's a couple of examples here. I think this mapping is quite important, even if it takes time. So the main opportunities, let's go through this. Well, I will just frame my speech within the broader frame of the very recent clean energy package. So most of the energy-related regulations have been reviewed for 1.5 years now. And what we've gained during this review of these most important directives and regulations is in acknowledgements. There's finally a definition for what is called energy communities. And this has been a bit floating for a bit of time. But this Monday, we got the very nice outcome that local energy community, they're not local energy community anymore, they are citizen energy communities. And this is a big acknowledgement of their main orientation as a citizen body, because there was attempts by corporate entities to empty them from their citizen and governance aspect, to make them technical tools to implement basically microgrids. Without this democracy aspect. So there are two definitions, one a broader one for citizen energy communities, which take again the some of the aspect I've detailed. So it's about the members, they should be natural person, local authorities or SMEs. Governments should be somehow democratic. The aims, they should be related to local benefits, in social, economic, and environmental terms. And there's a more a sub-definition for renewable energy communities, which is about producing green energy. So this is a major step onward. When we go more into details, this means rights for the citizens, right to participate into such a cooperative, rights for information, also right for non-discriminatory treatment of these cooperatives in the market. So this is directly applicable. This is a major step onward also. And this, there are also similar setup for renewable energy communities, so collective rights. So the right to participate in the market, generate, store, and consume, access these markets, and engage in energy sharing, which is the most innovative, technically speaking. So there's this framework which should enable energy communities to exist, to have a frame, and to participate into the market.
I'm really sorry to butt in while you're speaking, but 1 more minute, please, Roland. And then if you could wrap up, that'd be fantastic. Thank you.
Okay. So this is a bit technical. I go to the challenge. Missing acknowledgement. This would be the first challenge, because we have a definition, but the big challenge for us is to make is to have a spot in each EU regulation related to electricity. So that could be the most technical, which is network codes, or things related to state aid, to the EU budget. We have a definition, but still the regulation is made for the big incumbent players, for the conventional energy system as it has been handled for decades. Also, market integration of RES is problematic. And for example, now, one example of this is that all renewable projects could go through a tender or auction, which obviously is a lot more difficult for a citizen initiative. And main challenges also is the capture of the topic by corporate bodies. So here, well, I've taken Euractiv is well, you may all know it. It's very well known European journal. You can see big incumbent players, former fossil fuel actors, advocate doing their advertisements on this platform. So Equinor bragging about being more advanced than their fellow Chinese and US counterparts, or E.ON that is claiming the term of local energy communities. Well, the new terms of citizen energy communities will making it a lot more difficult. And just to conclude, if I can, I'd just like to share this. When it comes to changes we need to make, I think there's a huge streamlining to align all policy goals with the climate ambition that we have, that were set in the Paris Agreement. And also referring to the streamlining I've just referred to, it's more a vision like streamlining the cooperative business model, making a space for cooperatives and include people as actors and not only beneficiaries, and shift away from competition, but also include social and environmental benefits. That's really this visions of the commons that is, I guess, common to cooperatives and to FYEG, that needs to be implemented as a in the ideology and in the storytelling and in the policies of the EU. I've been a bit beyond my time, but I've made my points. Thank you very much for listening.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much. And thank you for all your fantastic input on that. That's absolutely great. Lovely to listen to. So with that, let me see. I would like to introduce our brilliant second speaker, Matilda, who is, again, I'm sorry for my pronunciation, I'm probably wrong, who is currently a State of Affairs and Social Acceptance of Energy PhD student, I believe, but I might be better letting you introduce yourself. Thank you very much. 10 more minutes.
Hi. So to be, I will be maybe a bit more technical than Roland before. So what you have to know about the energy in Europe, it's now mostly fossil fuels and nuclear power plants for energy and electricity. And most countries have or had highly centralized systems with like big industries and big utilities, as we call them, that produce and supply the energy. And for the moment, it is still a competence of the states. And while each state is free to organize its energy sector as it wants it. For example, you have like so many different remuneration systems for renewable energies. But we have an European energy policy, which brings us two main benefits. Well, European targets in terms of renewable energy and lower CO2 emissions with targets per country. And the other main thing is that in some countries they were like in France, there were like only EDF that could produce and supply, and they had to break and to split. And we will see after that is kind of good for us. What is for the Greens? The goal, our goal, is to have an energy system where, well, citizens have a voice in it, and we hope 100% of renewable energies and mostly community-based energy. So we face several challenges. The first one, I think, is the management of the transmission and distribution network, because basically we had like many big power plants that were connected directly to the network, and we have so many little windmills parks and solar panels everywhere, so they have to be connected to the network. and that's kind of difficult to manage for the TSO, so transmission system operators. And the other thing is that renewable energies are kind of they are not, we can not always produce with, because there isn't always sun or wind, so it's a little bit more difficult to manage than old fossil fuels power plants. So we need storage, which will be a real problem and challenge in the few years to come. And the other thing which is difficult is the construction of new high voltage lines to transport the electricity, because actually we need a European network to help like every country to face its demands when they need, but it faces actually huge acceptability problems because it disturbs the countrysides and people find it's kind of ugly. So it's one of the technical challenges we might face in the next few years. But there are some really good opportunities. First, you have to know that people in Europe are mostly in favor of energy transition and renewable energies in general. The thing is, I think that many people here who are listening already heard from NIMBY, like not in my backyard. And I think it's interesting to compare how here utilities like and big companies think and how we can think. I think that utilities, their goal when they want to make more renewable energy projects, but for all projects, they want to avoid that people are against their projects. And I think that the difference for us is that we want people to be involved and to support our projects, and that they create their own projects. And I think that because of all this change I mentioned on energy policy and on the split and this want to make more renewable energies, we have there an opportunity because we can propose and create new models. And moreover, if we have a good network, if we have like several wind parks and yeah, parks everywhere, it will be really good because we will have always production. So it's another opportunity of renewable energy and community-based energy. And the last thing I think is the independence from all that oil and uranium countries, because if we citizens are able to produce our own energy with wind and sun and so on, it will be like so well better and less polluting, and less we would be free from these difficult relationships with other countries. So if we could change now some points of the policy, and I hope we will be able to do it in the next mandate in the European Parliament. I think the first one of my proposition is first to stop financing these big industries and especially fossil fuels, and to to finance more these citizen energies. For example, with every euro involved by a citizen, the European Union could give also €1 or something like that. It's one idea. And I think that the other thing which are really important is to have tools to listen to what citizens are thinking, to be able to speak, to hear them, to listen to them, and to speak with them. And the last thing is training. Like, I think now energy is quite an expert topic. Like, there is so few people that know about it, and I think one major change, if we want more democratic energy system, a more democratic energy system, we have to train people on this. And well, to do webinar as we do tonight, for example, but it has to be organized by the EU, I think, and so that people are well aware of what they can do and what are their power. So yeah, I think I've said what I wanted to say.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much. On that note, we'll move on to our third and final speaker, the fabulous Juan. I'm not going to attempt his second name, who is speaking to us as a renewable energy director. Take it away.
Fantastic. Good evening, and big thanks to FYEG. It's amazing to, after a couple of years of being directly involved with FYEG, to be able to participate in a webinar like this about my favorite topic, which is energy. So I think it's really well the way you've done it, because Roland was talking from the energy cooperatives perspective, and then Matilde brought it to a more kind of technical perspective. So if you allow me, I think I'll take it to a more political, and kind of broad sense of political area, and trying to answer the same questions that my colleagues before were answering. So starting with what the main challenges for the community-based energy are in the European Union, I think the first one, and we need to be super aware of this, are the vested interests in the energy system. So we know there's a very big companies earning a lot of money running the current energy system. And therefore this means that politicians are influenced, the media is influenced, and basically the public opinion is influenced because there's these vested interests. If we don't have this in mind from the start, it's going to be very difficult to change anything at all. That's the first part. And secondly, that's linked to this. Why are these vested interests so successful? It's because of lobbying, and it's lobbying in all the senses. It's the explicit lobbying, it's the implicit lobbying when an energy company advertises in your newspaper, so the newspaper has to be gentle or be generous or be kind to those energy companies, and it's influencing. And that means that when a politician is in power, they hear lots of influence from one side, from the big energy companies, but they don't hear as much influence from the other side. So civil society, green groups, young groups, which also need to make their voices heard. And that's why it's so important to participate in formal ways of influencing. So when there's public consultations, it's a very boring thing to have to do, to kind of formally fill in or send emails or write to your representatives. But it's very important because that's the only way of the public, the politician, to hear both sides of the story. And then there's also the informal lobbying. So when I've been working as a sort of politician, I guess, in the energy sector now in Spain, I get meeting requests from the big energy companies, and they're not scared of saying, hey, I want to sit down with you, and I want to explain my vision. And obviously they don't come and say, hey, I want to make it so I can get lots of money, but that I know that's what they want to do. They tell me, hey, this is the best way because it's cheaper for everyone, and it's the most realistic way to be sustainable, blah, blah, blah. So they're telling me a real story, but their perspective of what the real story is. And because I'm green-minded, so I go and then sit with the green groups and youth groups and all the political groups and so on. But it should be the other way around. People should be coming to me from all over the society to come and sit down and give that side of the story. So I think it's important to realize that everyone else is doing the lobbying. We need to realize there's a legitimate form of lobbying where we all need to have our interests heard. So it's important that we organize, and we, FYEG is an amazing way to do that. Another challenge is the capacity to do things. So a lot of community-based or local-based activity is volunteer-based. People do it in their spare time. People do it because they're interested in it. But that means a lot of time you don't have somebody full-time working on it, or you don't have enough people working on it, or it's difficult to get the money, which means it's very difficult to be able to compete at the end of the day with the big companies or the current system. So, and then there's the even believing that we should be able to do it. What do I mean by this? We're very used as consumers to complaining to companies, or complaining to politicians, or complaining to government of how they're not doing it well enough. With the democratic energy system, we need to do that. We need to complain. We need to claim for what's right. But we also need to be doing stuff. If it's a democratic energy system, it means I, as a citizen or part of an organization, need to be finding the money and finding where I put the solar panels and how I'm going to pay for it. And obviously, I don't need to do that in my spare time, but we need to find ways of doing this from the civil society perspective. And I guess maybe the last challenge to finish this part is community aspect means consensus, and it means making sure lots of people agree with each other. But that's always very difficult. So Matilda was talking about the example of the NIMBYs, where people say, not in my backyard. I don't want the visual impact of a big power line or a solar panel or a wind farm. We have a case in the Balearic Islands, in Mallorca, for example, where we have an energy cooperative, which in mainland Spain, buys energy from solar panels and wind farms. But then on the island of Mallorca, they say, no, we don't want any solar panels. But then they don't propose an alternative, So being able to manage diversity is very difficult. It's fun, it's interesting, but it's also challenging. So I'd say maybe those are the challenges from my side. Then quickly to the opportunities. First, the fact that we have fantastic potential in the renewable energy sector. So if we have nuclear power, if we have coal power, obviously we can't do that community-based. You need a big company to find the uranium or find the coal, bring it to Europe, use it in a big plant, send the energy to the communities. We can't do that as a small community. With renewables, you can start with your local community center or with your house or your job or whatever, with some solar panels, and then start building from there. So the inherent potential in renewables is kind of a totally different mindset. We need to think about that. And also nowadays, because renewables are cheaper than conventional power sources, we can even compete from an economic perspective with the big players. So that's the first opportunity. Then it's also fantastic that the energy is something people are talking about. It's not just, oh, my energy bill is so expensive, but it's also, in Spain, we had a tax on the sun. So basically, you had solar panels and you were using that to generate your own energy. You had to pay a tax on however much sun you were using. And that was terrible, but it meant that people became very mobilized and people suddenly started talking about energy. So people are very mobilized and interested in energy policy. So that's, when people talk about things and debate, that's the first start towards successful politics. And then it's also very good that, local energy communities, they are in the European regulation, and Roland was explaining this very well. But now we need to make sure that, the general principle of local energy communities actually means something, and we can actually get working with this. So, how do we change all of this? What are the main changes we could do to make sure we have a sustainable and fair and economically sensible energy system? And go back to the politics, so being involved, being there, if it's indirectly through an organization, or it's writing to politicians, or it's lobbying or filling consultations, it's being involved in politics, like, young wings of political parties being involved in webinars and organizing and mobilizing and training their members. It's, getting young people and broad-minded people into institutions. So it's fantastic that we have people like, former FYEG people or existing FYEG people running for the European Parliament or running for other places. And that means, we have green-minded people in there making the decisions. So that's an important part of changing things. It's actually being in the right place to make these decisions. And so supporting our young candidates is a very important part to do that. And then, like I was saying, taking down the general idea of, community energy to the concrete. So, does this mean that in every country we have to say that some part of the energy system has to be for local communities? In Denmark, for example, you have to open up to the local community the investment in local wind farms. Or in the Balearic Islands, for example, we said any energy project that the regional government does, it can't only be money from the regional government. You have to open it up to local citizens or people living in the area to invest in this. And is this something we are prepared to do? So being able to stand up and be like, yes, I'm going to put my money in this, and giving the clear signals to our politicians is very, very important. Because if we don't do the lobbying, the big energy companies, the incumbents, they are going to be doing the lobbying anyway. So it's important that we are also there to balance things out and prove that we can do this. A big message from the energy companies is, hey, we've been doing this for 100 years, so you can trust us to do this. We'll be the sensible ones. So we need to prove that it can be done, and existing networks like Reece Co-op are fantastic examples to show that it can be done. So maybe from my side, this is all, and then we can get into questions and debate.
Thank you very much. That was fantastic. Lovely to hear from everybody. Thank you to our three speakers. And now I would like to move swiftly on to our question and answer section. For those of you who are listening live, if you have any questions at all, please comment on the link below and we'll try our hardest to get through them all. So the first question is to Roland. What are the key legislative/policy changes that we need on an EU-wide level to encourage the formation of Reece Coops besides mainstreaming and providing subsidies?
Yeah, thanks for the question. And I would have quite some reactions also to my fellow presenters' presentations, but I will answer to this first and we'll see if we have time. On this, yeah, it's true that mainstreaming is quite of a recap, and there's a lot of things we could do, and now what we have is just a beginning. It's a first, we have a step in the door, basically. Now there's an acknowledgement that the energy communities exist, but we need this to be implemented then at each level of the EU regulation, and there's quite several aspects that are dealt with at the EU level. I'm thinking about everything that is related to competition, and one of the big things next fight to come will be about state aid. Now that we have a definition for what are energy communities, to what extent would they be entitled to exemptions? So we don't have an administrative burden. So the benefits in terms of environment and social benefits are acknowledged. So this could be build the ground for exemptions. Also, these are directives, so they need implementation into the national energy policy. So each member state will have to incorporate these definitions, these new rights, this enabling framework into their national regulation, and this will require work with the NRAs, also work to go for the broader interpretation of the directive and not the narrower. Or the most narrow, and last but not least, there will be very important actors in these debates. They are the local authorities, because with energy democracy, we're talking about projects for local territories. And Mathilde, you were referring about training people. I think it's only one step. It's really about involving people. Energy democracy is about participation. So it's economic participation, because basically it's about using people's money. It's about so also a territory project. It's about a democratic project where everybody participates, and it's a territory project because locals, renewables, they are local. They are implemented at a local level, and you can decide among a community, whatever the size is, how this energy should be harvested and how the fruits of the sun, of the wind, should be spread among the community. In that sense, that's really what I meant by also changing the mindset when it comes to the solution. But this is already a broad explanation. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you very much. Can I ask, please, do either of the other panelists have anything they would like to reply, add, any opinions they can give? Anybody?
I mean, I agree with what he said. You know, it's about the involving people from a democratic perspective in terms of decisions, but also from an economic perspective. So it's actually getting people involved, and that means that the projects you will end up with are probably more suited to the territory because the people behind them are local people and not just kind of it's an international player that just comes to the local neighborhood and decides what should be there.
Wonderful, thank you all very much. So my next question is to Matilda. What renewable energy targets should we set as green politicians based on current technologies, assuming we can generate a lot of political pressure in 2050 or 2030?
Okay, so let's assume we have like a majority in the parliament and in the commission in May. Let's hope. From a technical perspective, I think it's quite hard to have 100% in 2030. I mean, it's in 12 years. Now we have about 27% of renewable energies in Europe, if I'm not wrong. So we miss like about 70%. It's a lot. I think that the main issue is the question of storage, as I mentioned it before. We need to develop like storage to a huge scale because of the intermittence of the renewable energies, and so I think it would be more 2050, but we can say we want to set the objective earlier so that we really give all the means we can before, like starting now.
Fantastic, thank you very much. Okay, my next question is to Juan. What do you think is the best and the worst of the European Union?
Of the energy union, I guess, not just the EU. So I think that the best is the fact that for the first time ever we have, and it's quite a paradox if you think about it, we have kind of the biggest political level, the EU, acknowledging from a legal perspective the existence of local energy communities, which is kind of the most, the closest or the lowest level of administration, or the closest to the citizens. So I think that it's fantastic that it's recognized there. That there's recognition, like Roland was saying, that energy communities do exist. Maybe associated to this, something that was approved, that is, the right to self-consume energy, or to self-generate your energy without penalization from it. So the fact that that's been decided at EU level is fantastic, and it helps push national, regional, and local governments to then react to this. And because a lot of Europe kind of looks up, a lot of the local politicians or regions look up to what the EU is doing, that signal is very, very positive. The worst part, I guess, like a lot in European policy, is because it thinks of a European mindset, it thinks of, for example, a European common energy market. So the kind of ultimate theory is that, somebody selling renewable energy in Portugal should be able to sell it to somebody in Lithuania, which conceptually and politically is fantastic. But then there's an automatic very big jump to the big players, somebody who can simultaneously buy energy in Portugal and sell it in Lithuania, for example. So it means that the thinking behind the actual implementation of this legislation doesn't quite match up to the rhetoric of the local. And therefore, you have a big emphasis on interconnection between countries, which is important to some extent, but maybe there's an over-reliance on kind of the big infrastructure and spending the money on power lines when maybe you could spend the same money or less money on local storage to kind of reinforce the local community. So I guess the best, the fact that it exists, the whole kind of local perspective, the worst, the fact that it's not yet there, and it's a very big player's mindset.
Okay, thank you very much. So my next question is to everybody. So we can take it in turns to answer. What will be the biggest struggle for energy having the European Parliament elections in 2019? Does anybody feel like they can go first to give other people a little time to think, or shall I just choose somebody at random? I'm very happy to do that. Okay, I'll go with Matilda. I'm sorry.
Can you repeat the question? I didn't quite get it.
I'm really sorry. So the question is, what will be the biggest struggle for energy with the upcoming European Parliament elections?
Well, I think as I'm French, I think that the question of the nuclear power will be really interesting and kind of difficult to manage, because well, yeah, I think that yes, this question of going out of nuclear and fossil fuels is difficult, because we'll have to explain that it's good for the planet, but also the price might increase, and we see that now in France, like in 2 days, those huge demonstrations against the rise of the prices of the oil. And so yes, I think this question of the prices can be difficult to defend.
Lovely, thank you very much. Okay, so similar question to Roland. What do you perceive as the biggest struggle for the European elections?
Well, for the European election per se, I don't know, because this will be very political. So you'll have something, I mean, what we see and the main arguments, they are about energy transition versus energy security. There's a lot of vested interests, as Johan said, about the energy sector, and the incumbent players, the fossil fuel industries, are saying we keep the lights on, and it's thanks to nuclear, to coal, to gas that we keep on having electricity of supply and secure electricity of supply, which is good for citizens, but which is even better for industries. It's such a strategic resource. So it can be about this kind of broad debate, and I'm looking in the direction of the big infrastructure that have also geopolitical influence, about the gas corridor through the south of Europe, through the north of Europe, so from Russia and from former Soviet, I think it's one of these former Central Soviet Republic. I don't remember if it's Kyrgyzstan or Azerbaijan, but basically this big infrastructure, they get financed partly by the EU, and I think it should be time to debate if they are needed, if we are aiming at the 0% fossil fuel by 2050. That's one of the things. When it comes to the most technical things, there are the support for the nuclear and the coal industry in the form of capacity remuneration mechanisms. That's exactly the same thing translated into technical terms. I think we should fight to avoid them. And there'll be a lot of technical questions for the energy transition, for the implementation of the energy transition, and thinking about the decentralization. This was touched upon by Mathilde when she talked about DSOs and TSO managing the grid. So if you have turbines and solar, it's a lot different to manage than having central coal and central nuclear power plants. It will be all decentralized, and it's not in the same part of the network, and coordinating all this will be hell of a work. And I'm thinking also about innovation. These new technologies, they enable new type of business models, and there will be a need to implement this in the regulation to make it happen in the ground. How can you collectively self-consume at the level of a building, at the level of a district? How can you have a electric car participating to the stability of the grid? All these innovation that could help to make this decentralized system more stable. They will require quite some regulatory work, but this is beyond, I guess, broader political debate for the elections.
Fabulous. Thank you very much. So over to Juan. I do have a different question for you, actually. So that is, what do you think about solar guerrilla initiatives, like setting up small solar panels on your balcony and directly connecting the modal to your flat grid? Should we encourage tiny scale projects as well? Let us know what you think.
Yeah, no, I think it's so, you know, local energy, take it as local as you can. And if that means, you know, in your house or even your flat or your kind of local building, fantastic, do that. Why is it important? One, because you start being able to, well, realize what it is to generate energy, and therefore you start becoming aware of how much energy you can generate and how much energy you can consume, and realize, well, in practice, how many solar panels do I need to kind of be able to match my own energy demands? And so people, you know, and it's been proved, people that start generating their own energy, they start saving energy because they realize, you know, how difficult it is to generate enough energy. So that's one thing. And then two, if you start doing it, you start forcing politicians, again, to take action. So what sort of problems do you encourage when you, or do you encounter when you do that? Does the local council give you any problems? Does the kind of block of build, you know, your neighbors, do they have any problems with it? And do we need any changes to deal with that? Do you have any other legal problems that somebody kind of comes in? And so by forcing it and by doing it, you put those problems on the table, and it means you can actually start to manage them. So, and if there's no legal problems and you can do it, then it's fantastic, because it's renewable energy that's not taking up any countryside, but just some urban space. So that's probably the best place for renewable energy to be. So yeah, definitely, let's encourage it. Let's do it properly. Let's do it safely. You know, make sure nobody comes into any electrical problems doing it. But definitely, let's generate as much energy as we can locally. And if that's your house, then do that.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
I'd like to quickly react on this question, because this is something that our members face usually as a question. Should we go, and I'm not misinterpreting you, Joanne, I agree with all you said, but some members of our members, so EcoPower's members, for example, they're asked, how can we do to become energy independent? Just generate the electricity that we need, and basically be able to be cut off from the grid and not rely on the system, not rely on nuke and all this, be independent. And they flag a big warning to this. The legacy that we have is very precious. We have a socialized system. We are interconnected, and going independent from the grid means that some people will invest in renewables, that have the means to do this, and that's great. But some of the other people will be left dependent from the system. That's one aspect. So there's a socialization of the grid. This also means if you go independent, that you duplicate also a lot the assets that you need. If you want to be independent, you'll have to invest into your own little modules. You'll have to have complementary renewable resources together with storage. that's huge. If you socialize this, you make it more even, and you share these resources, you'll need less storage, you may need less generation, and you need less resources. And just opening one door here, I think we should not be mistaken by the technological dream of shifting from coal to renewables. If we shift from each kilowatt hour we consume from fossil fuels to kilowatt hours we consume from renewables, we'll have to dig the hell out of the earth to find all the minerals, all the resources. China has just announced that they're ready to dig into the ocean to find minerals. We'll need to moderate our consumption. The interesting aspect, though, is that the only one energy company that I've heard talking about energy moderation was an energy cooperative. That's also why it is important to fight for energy democracy and not for-profit energy companies.
Lovely, thank you very much. Can I just take a moment to say thank you very much for our audience who have been very participatory tonight. Thank you for all your wonderful questions. There's a great diversity in that. Mathilde, I'm going to say your name different every time, I think. I'm sorry. Maybe it'll get created, who knows. Do you have anything to respond at all to the things that have just been said?
Well, I think I totally agree with Roland just said about this. Yeah, this getting independent, and yeah, I think this question of moderating energy is really interesting, and maybe it can be one of our response of our propositions, like try not, well, the best energy is the one we don't use actually.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry to put you on the spot once again. Can I ask, what do you think, Mathilde, the ways that we can educate people about energy? Would it be by popular education? What do you think?
Well, I think we should do both way, like at school, like basic things like how electricity works in a technical point of view, and how you come from a power plant with windmill, solar panel, and so on to your house. What's basically behind your, anyway, in the grid. But I think that popular education is just like so important, because as we said, we want to involve people, and at school it can be a bit boring, or when you don't know what you want to study, you're might be not that focused. And if you get people where they work, where they live, and you ask them question about energy, what do they think? And yes, I think it's maybe the best way to educate people, in involving them, and yes, reaching them in their everyday life. And moreover, as things are changing, it's kind of difficult to be up to date. And if you do it only at school, maybe it's you won't follow what's happening. And if you use a popular education, then you can, yes, be more aware and involve people and help them to follow what's happening in this passionating world of energy.
Lovely, thank you very much. That was really interesting. So can I ask, please, Juan, what will the future of Europe look like from your perspective? Will it be utopia or more of a dystopia?
Wow. Gosh, I guess I'm very optimistic always, because I guess it's the way I work. If Europe is going to be a dystopia and it's going to be terrible, then, you know, why should we be kind of working and being activists and doing all of these things and putting our hearts into all of this? So I think we have the opportunity for Europe to be this utopian place. It's not just going to happen on its own, though. Like, we actually need to build it. Like, this utopia isn't an abstract thing. It's something that looks very specific. It's a sustainable, democratic, fair, wealthy, from a kind of well-being perspective. But, you know, the typical guys, the big guys, it's not them who's going to build it. It's kind of everyone else. So we actually need to work towards it. So I think it's going to be, it's going to look good, because that's what kind of keeps me driving towards this aim. At least I'm hoping.
Fantastic. I like your optimism. That's great. Okay, can I pass the same question on to you, Roland, please? How would you like the European Union to look? Again, similar thing.
This is somehow very personal, very personal question. I say I would share Joanne's point of view that if you don't believe in what you do, you would just leave the things as they are and let the boat float to probably the wrong direction. Still, there are some reasons to be optimistic. One is the leadership of the energy union, of the renewables aspect, and also the historical opportunity to make it a more political topic. So it has been, the energy transition has been perceived as a good opportunity to get closer to the European citizens. With something that is getting more and more universal, as a wish to go for the for at least renewable energy. There are for sure different reasons for this, and not always the best one, but still, when it comes to the energy transition, I think it could go a lot, and it has been going a lot broader than the energy, than the usual Greens in the European Parliament. And for example, we find quite an open ear from the Commission itself. So within DG Energy, we have a good working relationship, and the things I've exposed, it shows that we also got quite some success in influencing the directive. Though, something I'd like to add is that I think we face a more and more unpredictable environment in all levels. This is at the political level, and I won't detail it, but this is also at the economic level, and we're celebrating the 10th anniversary of the crisis, and the people are getting ready for the next one. If you look at some economical analysis, and I won't surprise anyone if I say that the environmental aspects and the environmental indicators are really all on the red levels. So that this is not a reason to be pessimistic. It just means that we are in a more and more shaky environment, and that each little contribution on the right side can make the boat flip. It should flip anyhow, but it could flip to a better model, better ideology, better values that our societies will need in the future, because this model is now exhausted.
That was great. Thank you very much. Next question to Mathilde. How should the public behave towards energy in the future? Like, what sort of reactions, interactions are we expecting? If that makes sense.
Yeah, I'll try to answer. Well, I think there are actually two kind of now to kind of perception of energy. There are people who are like love technology and are really interested and who know everything that happens in the solar panel, and I think it's great. And there are other people who can be really afraid of all these new renewable energies and so on. And yes, maybe they could like try to see what really happened and like get interested into the topic. And yes, then try to know. Maybe one of the things is we can, yes, try to know how it works, and so that they can manage and control their consumption of energy. Maybe that's one of the answer I can get.
Fantastic, thank you for that. Even if it was worded a bit bizarre, I'm sorry. Okay, so my next question goes to Roland. How do you make sure that your organisation is truly inclusive and does not become politicised? Which impact does energy democracy have on global democracy? Hang on. I think I've just got two questions. I'm very sorry. I'll start that again. Okay, so Roland. Yep, cool. Just got a message telling me there are two questions.
I would put a border. I don't think that I think somehow they should be politicized. They should not be linked to a political party, and they shouldn't go in this political debate, right wing, left wing, what is who supports you. Or even when we get at the local level, it could be captured by some party. But I think that first the answer is in the definition. It's citizens' initiative. It's open and it's voluntary. So if you don't like it, you leave it. It should be democratic, so everybody participates and everybody has a say. And it's kind of a bet on a democratic model applied to the economic sector, and here to the energy sector. And it should be political in the sense that it's really about building a project. In my sense, it's really about building a project about what we do with our money on our territory for our communities. And it's really bringing back the politics where it belongs, to the city, really to the city. Police comes from a word that means the city in Greek, and that's really there that it could start again. And really the bet of Rescop EU, when we think about the energy democracy, is that maybe I'm going a bit too far there. Huh? It's really that by involving the citizens, sharing the benefits of this, because it's still an economical activity we're talking about. There are shares, and you can build also prosperity at the local level. And for example, a quick anecdote, it's EcoPower, one of our founding member in Flanders here in Belgium. They've started by knocking the door of a municipality called Eclo. They knocked the door of Eclo, who had a renewable project, and said, you should not call for simply developers to take your land and build their things for the cheapest price. You should include social aspects. You should include social participation, so the possibility for citizens to contribute and get shared in the project, but also educational aspects and energy efficiency program for this. You can put all these recommendations in your project if you want. They've successfully convinced the municipality, and EcoPower participated, and they were ranked higher than all the others thanks to all the this new criteria linked to social and environmental benefits for the community, and that's where their first project, and that's how they kickstarted their business that now gathers 50,000 clients and members in Flanders. I don't know if I've answered directly the question, but at least I've provided some clarifying example, I hope.
Fantastic, thank you. Do any of the other participants want to reply to that? Anything to add? Any opinions? No? No? Okie dokie, great. Next question then is to Juan. Are there ways to repurpose the existing energy infrastructures and systems in ways not to lose the massive investments already made?
Yeah, I think that's one of the challenges. So if we had to do an energy system from scratch, like from zero, we'd probably do it very, very differently. But the fact that we've spent tens and in some cases hundreds of years investing in the current infrastructure sort of conditions some things of what we do. So some of the existing system is still going to be there. So it's good that we have a power grid, because even if we're changing from centralized generation to decentralized generation, it's still useful to have existing power lines, which means we can share all the forms of distributed generation from different areas. So sunny areas and windy areas, and therefore use a lot of that. The grid is going to be there. In terms of existing gas pipes and that sort of thing, people are thinking of ways of either creating natural gas from a kind of excess renewable energy, but we need to see how that works. Or there's even talk of reusing it for hydrogen, if we're using hydrogen from renewables at some point in the future. But maybe some of the big traditional maybe existing power plants, especially closer to urban centers or whatever, we might be able to use them from a heritage point of view. So, part of our industrial past, industrial heritage, the big chimneys you see even in some cities, maybe that's a perfect place for an energy museum or energy training center, where you use that as proof of the past, where you can teach people of what the future looks like and why we need to build a better future. So I think some of the existing infrastructure you can use for the energy system, and some you can use as evidence of what was there and how we can move past it, maybe.
Fantastic. Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much. Okay, so right. You've all been absolutely fantastic. I think we've learned a lot. Great explanations and wonderful different perspectives from everybody. I would like now to start asking the last question, which, if it's okay with everybody, can we have it in one sentence, please? The last question is, what type of action would you like to see from the FYEG based on your own experiences? I'll give you a few seconds to think about it, and then Mathilde, can I ask you to go first, please?
Can you repeat?
So based on your knowledge, your experiences, your understanding, what would you like the FYEG to do next? What would you want to expect from the young European Greens young European Greens? What would you like us to do? A campaign, maybe lifestyle change? How can we help the cause?
Maybe we can help people to give them some guidelines to spare energy, know better their energy system, and maybe if they want, give them resources to create their own community-based energy system, maybe. Can be some ideas.
Thank you. Any idea is a great idea. Okay, I will go next on to Roland, please. One question, what can we do?
Guys, I have no clue what you can do. You know your organization better than I do. Do what you're best at. It's really, I think that the energy transition it really starts at a very individual level, and I see this wheel from many activists, and then you build on it. The individual level should just be an open door to get a broader implication, and I see that the FYEG people are, by just being here, they've already neutralized and collectivized their thinking, trying to go beyond their one's action. Any kind of action that goes in the right direction is helpful. I would say if it's about incentivizing individual behavior in the sense that Mathilde said, I find it great. Structuring pair exchange of what they do the best, doing campaign at the local level, works on a political level or non-political level, just about the energy transition. All these are great things. Just find your spot, guys, and do what you're good at. If you believe in it, you'll be great.
Fabulous, thank you. So, Juan, what can we do? What can the FYEG do? I can't speak anymore. I can't speak. What can we do?
So it's super difficult now after the kind of the perfect answer from Roland. Maybe what would I say? Use your network. Use the fact that you have so many interesting, keen activists everywhere in Europe to really take this from the European to the local level. So, let's make this a political issue everywhere in Europe and the local issue everywhere in Europe that we can. So, keep doing things like this. Keep keeping people interested, and if everyone can be involved at their local level, that means that we can build the European Energy Union from top down, but also more importantly from bottom up.
Fantastic, great motivation to end on. Thank you, everybody. Now we know we can go and change the world. Okay, so I would just like to bring it all back together and say thank you to Roland, who showed us how important it is that the rights and priorities need to be put into the hands of citizens, and to Mathilde, who put up with all my wrong name saying the whole time, and also gave us an insight onto how important it is to stop funding the big companies. And finally, a big thank you to Juan, who has been the best example of a young FYEG person becoming manager on a large scale. Furthermore, I'd like to say that bringing together Europeans from so many different perspectives with so many great names that have one common goal is what the FYEG believes in. As the Green Movement, we hope to see more people that are like our three fantastic speakers that are already taking part in the great changes to make Europe greener. We also thank the audience for turning up and asking some fantastic questions, and hope to connect and learn more from each other. Thank you all who have participated and been involved in this evening. Thank you all very much. And I will say now bye and have a fantastic evening. Thank you all very much. That was great.